Make sure. All right, perfect. We are recording. Um, all right. Well, thanks everyone for joining. Super excited to be here with Paul Michael from Panacea Financial, and we're talking about something I was telling him before that selfishly I'm super excited to keep learning more about because I am an employed physician, but as I go along, I keep realizing that that may not happen. May not continue forever and ever, and I keep becoming more and more interested in what does it take to start a practice, own a practice, and that's something that's still a real black box for a lot of physicians. I would say the biggest hurdle I hear people talk about when they say, "Well, yeah, I'd love to own my own practice, but I don't. I'm employed." The hurdle is I just don't know how to do it. And frankly, I've been in that same boat and continue to learn. So Paul is truly an expert on this. We've had him share his wisdom before, and it was like an amazing session. So I'm super excited to have him back and teaching us more about this. So certainly, as just in terms of some housekeeping, if you do have questions, feel free, raise your virtual hand, put it in the chat, and we can kind of answer them as they go along. And we'll definitely have time at the end for some Q&A as well. So, Paul, thank you for being here, and I'll turn it over to you, and I'm super excited.
All right. Well, thank you, Jordan. And yeah, it is definitely an interesting subject, right? I mean, there's a lot to learn and a lot to know before becoming a practice owner. So I think this is a really good time and opportunity where we could just go through this in a very comfortable setting and talk about all the details. So, and it's amazing to think it's already November 2025, and a lot of important transitions take place at the end of the year. So this is right around the time where we see a large surge of requests where people are ready to become a practice owner. We have practice owners who have filed the returns, people who are ready. And so we're going to cover this today. So I have a slideshow here, and it is appropriately becoming a practice owner in 2025, soon to be 2026 and beyond. So my name is Paul Michael. I am a regional healthcare manager here with Panacea Financial. I'm also a seasoned commercial banker. I've had over 23 years of experience, and I'm just continuing to work with everyone in the medical professional field. So, lots to share here today. So, we have some objectives and things that we're going to cover here. So, we're going to talk about analyzing the costs of starting or acquiring a practice, learning how to develop a realistic budget, identifying financing options for practice ownership, and then also evaluating your financing options for your unique needs. But today, specifically, we're going to talk about the practices and acquiring and what's involved with that. So, again, practice ownership paths. Buying in. Do you want to do, if you're looking to maybe buy into a practice, do you want to do a private or a corporate setting? Or also getting prepared financially, understanding financing options, and at the end, we'll also take questions. So we're gonna cover quite a bit today, but I'm gonna jump right in. So let's talk about practice ownership paths. There's a lot of different benefits here and pros and cons, and I just sort of want to go through that. So let's say that you're looking to become a practice owner and you want to start a practice. Let's talk about the pros. You're going to know the costs and the loan amounts right away. So, practice prices are higher right now due to demand and corporate pressure. There's a lot of different practices out there, and they are selling for a large amount. So you can actually keep your costs and your loan amounts down. You also have the advantage of getting brand new equipment and technology. I'm sure Jordan and everyone out here watching you would agree. It's amazing how quickly a certain piece of equipment, a scanner, will be state of the art. And 2 years later, there's brand new technology. So when you're starting a practice, you're going to have the brand new technology right from the start. You're not acquiring someone else's technology that's maybe been refurbished or touched up. Also, for staffing, you get to choose who your staff is. You can hire who you like. Also, you get to depreciate equipment. So there's values that you can actually write off as you own equipment that can really help you, especially when it comes tax time. But then also space availability. You're able to find lots of different spaces that are available. You can custom build them. So there's a lot of pros to starting your own business, but really the biggest thing is you're in control, you keep costs down, everything is modern, lots of different write-offs. But there's also cons. So costs sometimes right now for construction, it can be really high. In different markets, I've seen anything from 100 to 300 per square foot. And also depends on your practice and do you have an ambulatory? Are you just doing exam rooms? Are you building something out for customized electric and plumbing? So the cost can really vary. Also, if you do a startup, you don't have a patient base. So really having a reputation in the marketplace and the referral network is super important because you're going to have to build that from scratch. Now, if you have experience in the place that you're actually doing business, that can be beneficial. But if not, that's something that you're going to have to build. And here's the biggest thing too, cash flow. Typically, when someone's starting a brand new practice, it takes about 18 months before they're exceeding their costs and generating excess revenue and taking money home. And that's where even moonlighting, having an opportunity to work somewhere else where you start, can be very advantageous. And then also associating income. Like I said, the practice might not be able to support you and your family alone, so you're initially continuing just to earn wages outside of the practice. So there's definitely goods and bad, good pros and cons when you're starting a practice, and that's one way to own a practice and to become a practice owner. Now, let's talk about some case studies and some pitfalls here. Now, when you're planning a business, doing proper market research and demographics is super important. So let's say, for example, you're a business and you specialize in wound care. Well, if you're looking at the demographic that you're servicing, let's say you're looking for an older market, maybe different people who are going to have maybe more needs for this. The market research and demographics and being close to your customer base is super important. I'm sure we'd all agree if you are a pediatric doctor, you want to make sure that the demographics and where you're opening has large families, large households with children in the age that you're looking to treat. Same thing if you're working with an older subject, let's say you're an oncologist, surgical oncologist, you might want to be near a larger retirement community. So knowing your market research and your homework, knowing your demographics is super important. And next, referral networks. I'm sure you'd all agree um, having people who can refer you business that's qualified for you is much better than having to go out there and look for it. So part of a really good practice plan is to know your demographics, have the referral networks, but also marketing. I'm sure you'd all agree. There's a saying here, out of sight, out of thought, out of mind. So people need to know that you're there, and that's where marketing is so important. And also, I'm sure you'd all agree
C'est clair, gars.
marketing now is much different based on different demographics. So
Mhm.
now people who advertise on TikTok, on Google Shorts, people who are advertising and have social media are much more effective. They're reaching their people, and they also have branding. I'm sure we could, we all see the Zoom logo. Everyone knows who Zoom is, but knowing and recognizing your brand's important. And then also ramp up costs. And are you going to have, are most of your patients going to be consults or new starts? So over time, you'll have recurring revenue from patients, but some business models don't have consults. They're all new starts. And then also, are your procedures that you're offering, are they insurable? That's something that's definitely I encourage everyone to do is to be able to accept insurance when you start before you maybe consider doing a practice that's fee for service. And then let's also talk about project management. The size of space, size of construction, that's super important. Knowing that, having the right clinical equipment, having coverage for furniture, fixtures, and equipment, that is also vital. And the business plan, I got to tell you all, it is so important. And taking the time to really think about everything you're going to need is super important. Some people have done business plans and they'll forget their medical equipment, or they'll build a whole office and they're like, oh man, I need office furniture. So, and then there's also soft costs. So sometimes you might have to pay $5,000 for signage out front. You have permits and fees. You basically have costs for attorneys and for accountants. You're going to have costs for credentialing, for insurance. And then most importantly, working capital. This is something that Panacea is very generous with when it comes to starting a business. Not only providing the working capital, but also money for marketing are two of the most important things and calls that I receive on a regular basis because people have shortfalls. So this is something that we definitely cover, and this is really important to know. And the biggest pitfalls that we see are people don't have enough for working capital or marketing, or the demographics aren't right. So this is something that we take very serious and we'll coach you on. I want to show a sample budget. This is literally how much a new practice can cost if someone is going to go and build out. I'll give an example. I have a dental professional right now that's going to buy a brand new building and relocate, and their total project budget is about 480,000. I have a dermatologist who's going to buy a building, gut it, and build it out. It's 700,000. This right here that we're looking at is actually a real budget for a medical professional. And let me just point out here that over half of it is construction, but then also the working capital and other soft costs. You can see how quickly it adds up. I'm not going to go through it all, but you can see there's a lot of dynamics. And this is actually directly off of a form that we provide our clients and go through. It's a project budget sheet. And you can see here the costs and also just get very large, very quick. So let's talk about also if you're going to own a practice in 2025 and of course 2026 coming up here. Another option instead of doing a startup is acquiring a practice, and that comes with pros and cons. So, of course, you buy a practice, you have immediate cash flow. You have seller discretionary earnings, you have the economic benefit, it's clearly defined. You have the lease and location already in place and built out. You don't have to worry about demographics. They have clients coming in. They have equipment and technology. They have staff, a patient base, branding, marketing, referral network. It's all there. But of course, at the same time, you have to do your due diligence. You have to understand what you're getting into. And these are the cons sometimes also of acquiring a practice. The cost. The practice prices are higher due to demand and corporate pressure. Here in Arizona, I'll see medical, dental, veterinarian practices that are now selling at 90, 95% of last year's gross revenue. So the demand and the push, but again, you have the comfort of all the pros there that you see on the left, but also the cons. You can have equipment and technology that's old and needs upgrades. You can have a scanner that needs brand new sensors. The technology is advancing so quick. From when I started banking 23 years ago, X-rays with film were still standard. And nowadays, if you're doing X-rays with film, you're a dinosaur. So that's the modern day technology, the instant imaging screens right there. Now we have AI. We have technology that can directly assess and help and aid. And that was even available 2 years ago. So this is a perfect example. Staff. Sometimes you can acquire practice where the staff is overpaid. There's a personality clash, there's old habits, and also inherited issues. You'll have a patient base, referral networks, reputation, and clinical treatment that might not have been up to your standard. You can acquire a practice and then find out later maybe people were promised things as far as free treatments. Um, Also, you can have seller carry financing or performance transitions. And having a transition plan is basically key for protecting value. So it's something that's going to be really important if you do buy a practice and you have seller carry where the seller is going to be carrying the note like a bank. Having the transition plan to get into full ownership is key. And then really the value comes into with any practice. I'm sure everyone would agree here. It's the client base continuing to buy. So we have pros and cons of acquiring a practice. You know everything, but also there's some things that you might not know, and that's where due diligence really, really is important and understanding what you're getting. So, I have a case study here, something that I want to talk about. We've had an individual here that was buying a practice that did about $1.4 million in annual collections, and the seller discretionary earnings, the amount that they were going to take home, right? So your net profit. And then on top of that, you have, you're adding back interest because that's something that it's discretionary. There's different write-offs. They're basically, for sure you're taking home 550,000. And the asking price was 1.2 million. And there was also sometimes we'll see real estate that's available that you can purchase. So this person comes to us and says, "Hey, I want to buy a practice. I need 1.2, and then I also need an additional 115 or 150,000 in working capital, a little bit extra here to fix up the space, and the actual debt service for that is $140,000 a year." So if you're looking at this and you're looking at this overview, you're going, "Okay, look, I know how much the practice is taken in. I know how much I'm going to take home. I know what the asking price is, but maybe I have to negotiate. There's other offers. I have to go a little bit higher. This is the asking price. This is how much I'm paying, and this is, there's also real estate available, and I can do a down payment." Um, you have to stop and look at the benefits, right? So you can buy the practice, you have discretionary earnings, but if you buy the building, you're going to have more expenses. You're also going to be responsible for that HVAC unit if it goes down, common area maintenance if you're in a condo association, and then your down payment, right? But some of the pitfalls that you can see with acquiring a practice, accounts receivable. So the speed at which the practice collects their income and money that's due for services that have been provided, it's very important to assess and understand the rate at which is coming in. And I'm sure you've all heard of credentialing, getting switched over to be accepted with the insurances that are already being accepted is having the referral sources to convey clearly defined and bringing them over are important. And having a transition plan with the seller is so important. I'm sure you all agree if you're buying a long established practice of 15 years, you're going to want that seller to stay on board and provide warm transitions and introductions so that people can feel comfortable and know you want the seller to introduce you to all the patient base and continue to have them come. But then also having continued marketing and new starts, having people come in, not just treating an older patient base. These are all pitfalls and things that if you don't assess right away, you're going to have a challenge. But overall, this was a good practice. It was a good purchase. There was definitely a great profit margin. The real estate here actually was purchased as well. They borrowed extra for the down payment as well. But again, knowing the pitfalls and the things you have to understand before you take over is key here. So you got to dig into the due diligence details. So um, I also want to talk. Here's another option for ownership. It's partnering in an existing practice, right? So we've talked about starting your own, we've talked about acquiring your own, but this is another way. You could partner into an existing practice. And the pros are you're gaining revenue from the ownership of all practice revenue. You're sharing management duties and spending more time with patient care. You have mentors to guide you through a practice ownership challenges. You get to know the system and processes, people, credentialing, HR. If you're already an associate, you have the intimate knowledge of the staff and operations and the tax benefits. The practice's owners, the discretionary expenses can now be reviewed for tax liabilities. So there's a lot of pros. It's probably one of the most comfortable ways. And imagine you partner and then later you do a partner buyout. So not only can you do a partner buy-in, you buy out the partner later. So it's an acquisition, right? What we just covered. But here's the cons. If you do a partner buy-in, you're not going to have all the control. You might lack control in the practice with diluted ownership, right? There's other people who are going to be able to make that. And I like to say this, you are in a legal marriage with partners. There's a saying here that I don't know if you've all heard. Sometimes the one ship that sinks the most is a partnership. So you are in a legal marriage with partners. You are in it to win it, and there can be some hurt feelings as far as who's carrying what duty or if someone is doing more than another. You can inherit legacy issues from previous management decisions. Those things can affect you. So you could have someone who enters into a 10-year lease renewal. You come in as a partner, and guess what? You're along for the ride. You're also going to maybe be added as a guarantor on a lease. Maybe they're going to want you to be a guarantor on existing debt. So there's some different things you can inherit. And you could be at risk if big producers leave or things slow down. and you're also getting a share of the profit and cash flow. So if things slow down, so does your profit. So again, pros and cons of a partnering and a practice, but definitely it can be a very conducive and beneficial thing to do. So let's do another case study here. This is an example of someone maybe buying in for a minority partnership, right? So you have a practice that's doing $7 million a year. The practice is taking in 1.1 million. By the way, here's a fancy bank terminology that you can learn about EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, and amortization. If you want to meet with me afterwards and talk more about this, and I can take you through this, it's an important thing to know, especially if you're looking at a practice here. They have a valuation done that says it's worth 6.5 million. So hey, someone's going to buy in for 10% ownership, 650,000. And so they also want some additional working capital to inject. So they do 770,000. They're paying $105,000 a year to debt service for a 10-year loan. So the question is here, if you are going to buy in and you're going to minority partner buy in, what's the benefit? Do you have scaling over ownership over time that comes automatically with tenure? Do you have the first right of refusal to buy out another partner if they leave versus bringing in someone new? What are the benefits to you? But most importantly, we talk about this a lot. What is the economic benefit? So, how does this benefit you over time? What write-offs are you going to have? What incentives are you going to have to stay, maybe reinvest? These are things that are important. And if you don't have them outlined, it can be a pitfall. If you buy and you don't have graduating abilities or reinvestable assets, it can come to harm you. Also, having buying agreement terms. If that's not clearly outlined ahead of time and you're not talking about what that means and the responsibilities and roles, you can be unpleasantly surprised if someone's calling you and you're going, hey, by the way, got some duties here for you to do, and you don't like it. So also voting and membership interest, not looking in on the future, that can also affect the whole entire tempo or the culture of where you're at. So all these things can be possible pitfalls. Again, the pros and cons. But private versus corporate. This is something I want to talk about. There's private practices, there's corporate practices. For dental, there's DSOs. For medical, there's MSOs. Veterinary practices, there's a lot of corporate ownership coming into a lot of different things here. And I want to go through pros and cons of this as well. So the pros, if you're buying in or partnering in with a corporate practice, it's the most passive way and ownership model to gain revenue from clinical operations. Very quickly, just able to get in and have that revenue. Minimal management duties. You spend more time with patient care. The processes are all in place. It's typically offered to associates who already know the practice, and there's tax benefits, right? But at the same time, a lot of it comes with here's the cons. It's minimal ownership. There's no real control. And again, you're in that legal marriage. And we could talk a little bit about venture capital versus doctor owned, but again, you're in it. You're in it to win it for the long term. Uh, and it's partnership typically at the clinical level, not corporate level. So you're inheriting legacy issues from previous management decisions. You're sharing the profit and cash flow, and sometimes you won't be able to direct that. It might not be as good one year versus the next. And then there's transitioning and selling shares in the future. So again, there's really good things and bad ways. We could talk about different models and different things here, but um, we do offer minority partner buy-ins, and that's something that's for people to get. So let's talk about this. This is something that, gosh, if I could just have a time machine, if I could go back in time, I'm sure we've all said that, right? Gosh, if I could invest in Amazon, if I could invest in Bitcoin, if I could go back and stop myself from getting in the car that day and going this way, like there's all these different stories, but preparing financially, if there's one thing that I want you to take home from this, this is key. Now, there's different types of loans out there. There's SBA loans, there's business loans, there's specialty loans. There's a lot of different options out there. I know there's a lot of noise on this slide, and you'll be able to come back and look at this later. But there's a lot of different ways that you can go. SBA, the Small Business Administration loans, they have great benefits. They do have higher rates and fees. They can be anywhere from 100,000 to 5 million. They have a lot of paperwork, takes a long time to approve. But here's the benefit: they're one of the easiest things to qualify for. They'll use projections for cash flow versus actual tax returns. They're 10-year term loans. They can be even longer with real estate. You can even wrap a practice and building acquisition loan and put them together over 20 years. You can buy a building, and let's say something happens and you sell your business the next year, you can legally own that building and continue to rent it, and you're just fine. You don't have to go back to the bank and let them know that you're no longer the owner. You can rent it. So there's some neat things. There's some, but also with an SBA loan, they're most likely going to ask for a lien on personal residence. It depends on the equity. So but with business loans, like we provide 100% financing for acquisitions. They have the lowest rates, even potentially go higher than 10 million. It's a traditional bank application, pretty average approval time, fixed rate terms up to 7, even 10 years. And then the collateral typically is tied to business. Very, very rarely is it going to be personal. And there's some financial covenants. But then you have specialty loans. I'm sure you guys have heard of a lot of the different companies out there that have specialty loans, but sometimes they can come with might have, the lowest rates, 100% financing, and they're easy for approval, but sometimes the rates aren't the best. But with us, the neat thing is not only do we have standard business loans, we have specialized loans. So for us, we're the best of all. We basically are a bank that was built by doctors for doctors. So our loans are specialized. They are just for medical professionals. There's the easiest route for approval, fast approval time, easy to qualify. We'll do terms up to 15 years, and it's typically unsecured or just secured by the business. But what I was going to warn you about, I got a little ahead of myself. There are specialty lenders that are predatory lenders. So I will warn you, be careful. Make sure that if you are doing a loan for a medical practice or startup or partner buy-in, make sure it's a bank like us that accommodates medical professionals. We understand what you're doing here. It's the lowest rates. There are specialty lenders, again, that are not a bank or financial institution, and they'll have much higher rates and really bad prepayment penalties. So be careful. But the greatest news is you can consult with me, and I don't bill by the hour. My advice is free. Now, I want to talk about this. This is where the time machine comes in. Many doctors make common mistakes, and the number one thing that they do, there's a lack of financial preparation or poor understanding of purchasing terms. So I want to tell you, you need a team. You want to have a financial advisor because the time to make those plans, the most beneficial time is now before you enter into an agreement. Also, something that you should know if you're going to buy a practice, the seller wants the practice note, the purchase note. They want it to say that you're buying nothing but goodwill and no tangible assets. But the most beneficial thing for you is that the purchase agreement says you're buying tangible assets and not goodwill. Do you know what that means? Well, if you don't, you need a financial advisor along with a CPA and an attorney. But most important, a banker, someone who can introduce you to all these people and you can start making plans ahead of time. And if you are thinking about buying a practice, talk to me first. One of the things that I see all the time is that you have a medical professional, they get into their first well-paying job and they buy a really, really high-priced car and a really high-priced home. And then they go to buy a practice. Remember earlier when we were talking about something called seller discretionary earnings? Well, you need that in order to pay your new loan and your household costs. And guess what? If household costs are really high, because your student loans already are, but if everything else is, it can make purchasing a practice really difficult. And where you get those really low rates and really great specialized loans like what we can offer, you might now have to start looking at SBA loans that have higher costs and maybe you're putting more down. So I would tell you, if your ambitions are to buy a practice, talk to me first. I'll get you set up with a financial advisor, the CPA, and attorney, someone who can review the contracts and the strings. They can understand the economic benefit, understand the terms of who you're working with and how those transitions look, and how you can have the best financial gain and manage your future wealth. Some of the most successful people I've seen are the ones who started out, had a modest expenses, bought their practices, built their empire. They own the real estate, they build the equity, and pretty soon they're taking home five, six, $700,000 a year with little to no taxes. But it all is a lack of financial preparation or poor understanding of purchasing terms that can take you down a road you don't want to go. So the team is key. Now, when you're talking about loan preparation, you're going to have a personal financial statement. You need to fill it out, and it's basically a listing of how much you own, what you owe, and therefore the net, how much liquidity you have, right? So we're going to look at bank account balances, non-retirement balances, your home, your auto, like we just talked about, luxury items, and all of the credit that you're using and the balances you're going to have are going to affect your credit score and your history, which is what banks look at. But so it's important if you start talking to someone early, you're going to want to also have some excess liquidity. Banks are looking at that now as well. But then your experience, something that you all might want to know. Banks are going to look for you to have at least 2 years or more experience in your medical field before you go to buy a practice. Now, I will tell you what makes our bank different. We'll look at internship, residency, maybe working with a practice. We'll look at that as real life experience, and we've made exceptions on that. And also management experience. Have you worked at a practice and maybe managed it? Have you been the sole practitioner before you're going to go buy your own? So are you able to get reports to show your production abilities too? That's something that banks are going to want to see. And these are good things to know, right? So if you want to do this, you can start preparing this now. Keep your usage low. Start building excess liquidity. Don't make the luxurious purchases till later. And then also having the practice experience, management experience, having the production reports. So, the situation here, you're going to do a purchase or a buy-in or a startup. We're going to be looking, if you're doing a purchase or buy-in, we're going to look at your financial condition. We're going to look at the profitability of the practice and the price. We're going to ask what your transition plan is. And we're going to ask what the clinical makeup is. So what's the staff? What are the hours? What services do you offer? What's the breakdown of the and with the startup, we're going to look at, hey, well, the space, the project budget, the business plan, the demographics, all these things are important to prepare and know. So knowing your personal financial standings, your credit, having the experience, and knowing about the situation are all really key when you're preparing for a loan. And again, we're here to guide you through that. So short, sweet, to the point. I'm sure you might have a lot of questions. I would love to hear them. Please, by all means. And Jordan, I'll give it back to you.
Yeah, no, that was fantastic. I love how you ran through the case examples as well, and definitely like a masterclass. Russell has a question here. I'm gonna just really quick before I know this is not exactly like what you're counseling people on, but what mistakes have you seen, or what advice would you have with people you're working with in terms of like red flags when they're entering a practice, more on the maybe even less on the financial side, but more on like the personal side um, that you've seen? Because that's always a tricky thing to navigate.
Okay, sure. Red flags that I've seen. First off, you are going to want to look at the schedule and you're going to want to see how far out they're scheduled, not only for recall, but for new patients. I think that's vastly important. You should also be able to access and see all patient files, and you want to see how everything goes from seeing a client to recording all the medical history to then billing and collections. If that is not clear, precise, and healthy, that's a big red flag. I would also, this is something that people, it's amazing. You would think some of these things are so obvious, and it's just um, social media. Go look up on Google, Yelp, and Facebook. Go see what the ratings are and what people have to say about the practice. I have read things, people that would it's shocking. Also look up the doctor. See if they have any disciplinary or non-disciplinary issues. There's a saying, you don't want to inherit the wind.
Hmm.
That is something that can happen here. So, healthy schedule, healthy patient files and records and accounts receivables, social media, seeing how everything's going there. You can also, ask around. You can ask about, you can talk to the staff and, okay, now I have to preface this. If you are going to buy a practice and you have offered a letter of intent and it has been accepted and your financing has been accepted, you definitely want to go in and you want to meet the staff and you want to understand what's going on there. Um, that is something that's super important. You can find out a lot just by talking to existing staff. But those are some of the biggest red flags. That is a wonderful question. That is something that I wish all of my clients were prepared for. But those are, of course, and then without saying, you want to have legal review.
Hmm.
You want to have someone review the financials. Um, I will tell you this, one of the biggest red flags that I've seen is practices that are too profitable.
Okay. Like if it's too good to be true, it
Big deal.
usually is.
Yep. I've seen practices that are incredibly profitable. I'm like, this is too good to be true. And then you find out later that the owner's spouse does billing and that they've been doing it wrong.
Hmm.
And if that's Medicare or Medicaid and you're doing a stock purchase where you buy the EIN number, you actually buy the business and you keep the credentialing, you could inherit a mess. So beyond, without saying, of course, all the rest of your reviews are super essential. That is a wonderful question. That is a wonderful question.
Awesome. Super, super helpful. Um, okay, we'll go through some of the questions in the chat because we've got some good ones too.
Yeah.
Russell's asking, would you go through some pearls for when joining an existing private practice? To what detail should we ask for financial information of the practice, and at what point in the interview or joining process is it appropriate to ask for that?
Okay. So if someone is inviting you, so the question is, what are some pearls if you're going to be asked to join a practice, right? So
Mhm.
a partner buy-in. And
Yep.
at what point is it appropriate to ask for financials? Okay.
Yes. And like to what extent of the financials, I guess.
Okay. So the first thing that's going to happen is if you're talking to someone, they're going to ask you probably to sign a non-disclosure agreement. If they don't, good for you, because you can take that information, you can talk to just about anyone. Um, but if someone's asking you to join, I think the financial should be something you see first. I mean, let's be honest. You want to be part of a profitable, successful business.
Hmm.
So their overhead costs are too high if they're paying people too much. And like we said in our examples, right? What if the practice doesn't have any profitability? So what's the benefit of signing up and joining a practice and maybe the practice is only making 30,000 in excess profit per year, but you're also signing and acting as a guarantor, right? I mean, so yeah, that's one of the things where you want to be very careful. But I think financials should come up right away. As soon as you sign a non-disclosure agreement and you offer a letter of intent and that is accepted, typically you have a due diligence period, which is maybe 30 to 45 days. You should be able to get financial packages of 3+ years, and you should be able to go and consult with an attorney, an accountant, and go from there. Some of the pearls, some of the best things I've seen from buying into a partnership. Partnerships sometimes can be like a warm blanket. Um, it's like there's no place like home, right? I mean, so having tenured, seasoned professionals, having a successful, recognizable name brand that people refer to and love within the community, having that built-in tenure and respect that sometimes takes 30 years, 10, 20, 30 years to cultivate. Those are some of the most beneficial things that I've seen people take over. This is the biggest pearl. And if you don't hear anything, hear this. Sometimes when you buy in, you'll find really quick that the fee schedule hasn't been updated in the last 5 or 7 years. I've seen examples where a minority partner comes in, they look at the fee schedule and they go, doctor, you're accepting $55 for this procedure, and the reimbursement rate for insurance is now 700. and they updated it and they get paid. And it's just like waving a wand. So those are some of the pearls. Just the tenure, respect, proven network, little to no stress.
Awesome. Um, all right. Cindy has a great question too. 10 years into practice as an employed plastic surgeon. Now I would like to start my own private practice. Does this experience count in qualifying for a business loan, or do you need to be in practice on your own for 2 years?
Yeah, no, being a practicing medical professional for at least 2 years, and residency counts, just so you know. So if you've been a resident for 2 years, if you've been practicing in a practice for 2 years, just so you know, it was Cindy, right? Cindy who asked the
Cindy.
question?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cindy, I just financed a $5 million practice and building purchase for a plastic surgeon. And they were practicing and moonlighting, and they were actually flying out of state to go work at a different practice. But they have the acumen, the know-how, the knowledge, and it's been wonderful. And they negotiated a really well thought out partner transition with requirement for the first year. And the building also has an ASC built in, which they bought as well. So that is great. And if you are planning to do that, I'd love to talk with you. I'm working with a number of plastic surgeons right now for different plans.
Okay, I'll contact you then. Thank you.
Thank you. There you are.
Yeah, hi.
You got it.
Hey, Cindy.
Yeah.
Hey,
Um,
Jordan.
awesome. Did you have a follow-up, Cindy? I don't want to cut you off. Sorry.
No, I'm just getting more information. So this is all very good. I will be contacting Paul. So
Um,
Excellent.
thank you.
yeah,
Looking
of
forward to it.
course.
Yeah.
Um, Paul, one thing that is, I think sometimes can be tricky to figure out, like when you're like financially modeling the practice that
Hmm.
you think you're going to have. Let's say if you're striking out on your own, you're setting up your own practice. That's something
Okay.
I think can trip people up, or that I hear a lot about. Um, how do you sort of talk to physicians about that? How to go about that modeling process of, okay, how much do I think I'm going to make so I
Yeah.
can figure out reasonably, this loan, how I'm going to cover the debt service and things like
Yeah.
that. It's obviously a big
Yeah.
part of the puzzle.
Great question. And this is something that I think is super important. So many times have I received business plans and they're like, I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to open a practice. And my first year, I'm going to make $1 million. And I'm going to make $500 net income. And I'm like, okay, great. And I'm like, let me see your business plan. They're like, I don't got one. And I'm like, let me see your fee schedule. They're like, what's a fee schedule? I'm like, that's how much you're going to charge for procedures. So think of it like this, right? I like to think of revenue generation. Think of a pepper grinder, like what you see at restaurants, right? So you have the opening and you have the peppercorns that go in. So imagine you're filling the peppercorns in, right? Some of them don't even go in the container. Some of them are too small, they fall right through. Some are just right and they split in half, they split into quarters. Everything is all mixed up, right? So it's like your patient base, right? Your patient base in the demographic that you're serving, some are just going to drive right by you. They're never going to come in. Some are going to come in and they're just going to need a basic procedure. Some of them are going to be some more intermediate and complex needs. Some will be recurring patients. So when you're looking to start up and go out on your own, I think it's super important that you have a firm business plan with financial projections. And this is the key point, that is based on a fee schedule, and you've clearly assessed out of all your patients coming in and seeing how what kind of cases are going to be and what kind of revenue you're going to receive. And the technology, I'll tell you this is like the greatest part of living in the day and age that we do now. There are companies that have this figured out so well, it is mind-blowing. And they know, they have the demographics, they know the household size, the income, where they spend, what their discretionary spend is. Do they have medical insurance, Medicare, Medicaid, PPO? Are they fee for service? What exactly kind of procedures are getting done? I'm sure you've all figured out by now the technology that's surrounding you. You have it set for permission to recognize, calling it by name. And so it's listening to everything else you're doing. and it's taking notes and it's selling it to all these different companies. In fact, Amazon has it figured out so well that they know that if they put certain products in their car and sell it at a certain price vantage, you will buy it and they package it in the vehicle as they're driving to you. That is how advanced the technology is for demographics, household income, spend, and everything. So if you're going to go out on your own, demographic, financial projections based on a real up-to-date fee schedule with some kind of advisory company or something that's guiding you. Please, if you're starting your own practice, don't go with a bank that doesn't require you to show this because you're going to fail. I've seen people literally just build on the wrong side of a highway. And just if they built on the other side, the access and ease of which people could get there in a household they want to serve and the demographic was right across the highway. Super important. So that's my advice.
I have another question, Paul.
Yes, Cindy.
So, how do you go about getting that demographic information in your area?
Great question. There are marketing companies, there are medical specialty companies, there are planning companies out there. I would recommend reaching out to a professional advisor who can help you to grab that. So right now, if I want to know, like Cindy, for example, since you're here right now, what's a major city next to you?
From
Okay.
Raleigh, but I would want to be in Chatham County, so there's no plastic surgeon there. And, a close by city is Pittsburgh.
Mhm. So you can actually do a search on the US Census Bureau and you can look up city, states, or towns. And they have some very basic information as far as household size, demographics, spend. It's really amazing what you can find. But a specialized marketing company, someone who specializes in helping medical professionals to find the demographic and where they want, I'll be honest with you all on this call. There are a lot of companies that specialize in this. But that's one of the most basic things that I think you need to have proven in your business plan. That is a great question, Cindy. You're muted, Jordan, by the way.
And Paul and Jordan, so sorry to interrupt. This is Alex, also with Panacea Financial, Cindy on this call. I just wanted to chime in to let you know, very similar to what Paul mentioned, but we do have a close relationship at Panacea Financial with a marketing company that does exactly what Paul mentioned, right? They are running demographic reports and really allowing you to understand the basics of the area that you live in to thrive when you're making these decisions. So I just wanted to quickly chime in to let you know that if you do have a conversation with Paul, we do have a wide can have you reach out to and coordinate with for
Okay,
these
thank you, Alex. That was going to be my next question. So, and you answered
There
it.
you go.
Perfect. Yeah.
Alex, your sidekick.
Yeah.
Um, well, I want to, as we're bumping up our time, I want to be respectful of everyone's time. But if there's any last minute questions, please throw them in the chat. Paul, I'm curious, have you seen with what you do more of a transition to, I guess it's mainly within primary care, but like a more direct primary care model or like you were calling it a fee for service? Um, have you kind of seen that shift and any sort of observations that you've noticed with that?
Great call out. I just had a startup that just booked and funded today, and their concierge service for pediatrics. That is a trend that I'm seeing. At home care, a pediatric doctor who will come to you and your children.
Hmm.
And that's a membership model. So not only are they paying a recurring monthly fee, but then also all the labs and different things like that are covered by insurance, but it's a simple call. And then there is an office also they can go into. That's a trend that I'm seeing. Um, so that's pediatric. For I'm seeing now a lot more wellness clinics that incorporate hormone treatments with aesthetics
Hmm.
and hyper wellness. That's something I'm seeing that's becoming a lot more trendy. Decentralized surgical centers. So surgical centers that are not in a hospital setting, but like actually free from that and control, where they can control costs and just much better, I would say, hygiene, much better staff care. Um, Gosh, what else have I seen? Those are three trends that I think that I've seen. Veterinarians with membership models as well.
Mhm.
Private pet insurance, I've seen that. But I have seen a shift to fee for service because a lot of people are tired of insurance.
Yeah,
And I'll be very honest with you. That's something that can be a very complicated process, and not being paid what you're worth. And a lot of people will just rather pay cash and then have a discounted cost when they come to see you. Um, I am seeing a lot more shift on what's very interesting is I'm seeing a lot of businesses also offer aesthetics. That's something that's interesting. Dentists who will do Restylane or Juvederm injections into folds. In fact, I can see some here that I need to get Cindy, I'll give you a call.
All right.
But it just it's something that people are touching on. So you can go. But that's a great question. Yeah, there's always, and it's amazing too. We're talking about technology. Think about how quickly we went from pagers to cell phones. And now we have little iPods you can put in your ear that do it all. Look at Uber and Lyft. It used that everyone took taxis, and now it's like taxis. You take a taxi, you just use the app. So, I mean, things are progressing, and now with I don't know if you've all had a conversation with your chat GPT, but it can talk just like a person. That's another trend I'm seeing is AI mixed into medicine. That's something that's now becoming a very quick norm. So, an amazing time to be alive. It definitely now. It's incredible some of the things we have access to.
for sure. And I'll throw out a selfish PSA, but is there definitely is a lot of scope creep with aesthetics, but see your board certified plastic surgeon for all aesthetic work. Go see Cindy
Yes.
down south. Um,
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, scope creep is a whole nother topic we could spend an hour talking about.
forever
So,
on.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah,
I'll,
I know,
uh,
Jordan, I know you know about that being
Yeah.
a plastic surgeon. So,
All right. Thank you so much, Paul. That was, again, fantastic webinar, fantastic information. It's always like a master class. What is the best way for people to get in touch with you? Because I'm sure there's going to be questions and follow up.
sure. So you can actually reach me at my email. So it's Paul period Michael. So Paul period Michael at panaceafinancial.com right there on the screen. And then also right next to it, my mobile phone number, 623-340-2356. And then lastly, let's say you don't have any of that, just go to panaceafinancial.com, ask to contact us, and remember, better call Paul. That'll be the best way to
There you
remember.
go.
You'll reach me right away.
Perfect. No, well, thank you so much again. Thank you, everyone who joined live. If you're watching a recording, thank you for watching. So, thank you all so much, and we'll see you next time.